Hi guys, welcome back to our relationship series. My name is Nadi and I will be your host for today. Episode 2 is called Before Coffee Met Bagel, and we are going to talk about how to navigate wisely through Christian singlehood. I have some of my great friends here who are near and dear to my heart, and they're going to talk about their life experiences in singlehood and how to just be wise about life decisions, where they are in their life right now. So let's start off with Andre. We're going to answer all the same questions, but can you just say your name, your life stage, as in are you single or married, a brief context on your experience as a single or when you were single, and what is your favorite kind of bagel?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Andre. Right now, I'm a young adult pastor at Mosaic Christian Fellowship, and my context is I am married. Been married for 2 years now, coming up on 2 years. And I guess before I was married, I was single until I was pretty much like 23. I started dating my current wife now, Nita, when I was 23. But before then, like, singleness was confusing for me, hard to navigate as myself as well. Although I didn't seriously date up to 23, I'd been on dates, people tried to introduce me to different people. There were some people I was interested in, but it never got to the point where we would be official in dating. And so, yeah, that's kind of my experience leading up to 23.
All right. And what is your favorite kind of bagel?
I'm not a bagel person. Yeah, so I don't really eat bagels. I know. I tried to think of something, but I know my wife watching, she would have been like, you don't even eat bagels. So I'm not really much of a bagel person, but if I had to choose, I'd choose an everything bagel if I had to choose.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Stay true to yourself, Andre.
Yeah, trying to.
Thank you for that. And let's move on to Christy. Hello.
So my journey so far has been majority singleness, and I dated, I think when I was 25. It was a very serious relationship. Thought it would go into marriage. Didn't work out. So that was almost 2 years, and pretty much since then, been single and loving it.
I love that for you.
Bagel-wise, I also don't eat it too much, but if I had to, I'd probably do toasted plain bagel with cream cheese and salmon, okay? So that is the order. Thank you so much.
Toasted. You got me. Yeah, toasted. All right. And our last, Patrick.
Do I look at the camera? I'm Patrick. I am the college pastor here at Mosaic Christian Fellowship. My journey, singleness, I am married a little over 2.5 years to my beloved friend, wife, Sungin. And before that, didn't grow up Christian, so I had a good amount of dating experience, not the best. Yeah, definitely not the best. Growing up, and I think after I became a Christian, I think it was really confusing for me as well. I think if I would go back, I would redo a lot of things, and yeah.
Okay. Your favorite kind of bagel?
If I had to choose, I would say the egg bagel.
The egg bagel.
Oh, it's just called egg bagel.
Oh, egg bagel, but egg bagels are pretty solid.
Why is it called an egg bagel?
I think they make it with eggs.
It's more egg. Yeah, egg based.
It's like yellow, straight up yellow.
Yeah. All right.
It's just fluffier.
It is fluffy. New York, New Jersey bagels are pretty good. And since we are from New York, New Jersey, let's talk about, you guys shared a little bit about your singleness journey, but can you kind of let us know if you were Christian majority of your singleness journey or not? Patrick shared that he wasn't really Christian at the time. So if you guys could kind of let us know how that is.
Why don't you elaborate more since you just...
Yeah, I mean, didn't grow up in a Christian home. I'm first Christian in my family. And I became a Christian Yeah, 2011. So that's when I became a Christian. And I think from there, I had to do a lot of unlearning, lot of learning as well of like, hey, why should I believe this, and things like that. And I think that kind of helped me navigate like, hey, what are the values I actually believe in now? why do I believe him? Do I see that it's actually fruitful? Like, do I believe it just because this is the Christian thing to do, or do I actually believe it because I see how powerful it is? It sets me free, things like that. So I would say, 20 years of my life, about a little less than 20 years of my life, I was not a Christian. And for the next 10 plus years, I was a Christian.
What do you think was the biggest change from non-Christian dating to Christian dating for you?
I think it's like almost like the purpose of relationships. Because I think before it was, I love the idea of being in a relationship, having people tell me or like coming up like, hey, I heard you got a girl, da 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 da. And I feel really good about that, right? And not only that, I think even for me, my heart, like I would almost use the other person to kind of fill a void in my heart. And I think that's like, if I'm gonna be honest, like that still carried out through when me dating when I was a Christian, because I feel like no one actually told me things like that. And I think after I became a Christian, I still dated. I still sought a lot of like security, satisfaction in my partner. And I think through that, I realized like, this isn't fulfilling. She can't really fulfill the deepest parts of my heart. At the end of the day, I will never fully be known by a person. And I think that's something I had to come to grips with and realize like, hey, there is someone far better, someone who's perfect, who could actually love me with the perfect love that I need. And so I hope that answers your question.
That did.
Yeah. I think mine is similar too. I think I became a Christian when I was 17. That's probably when Jesus became, real to me and personal to me. But I think up to that point too, the relationships have just been something to fill an empty space in my heart. Like for people who know my story, and I know Patrick, if you want to elaborate on this too, but like, having father wounds and stuff like that, I definitely wanted to fill that part of my heart with relationships, whether that be the affection of a woman or whatever. And so I know for me too, when I approached relationships, it was all about like, how can I feel satisfied? Like, how can I feel worthy? And how can I make sure you're approving my worth and things like that? But I think the difference between marriage, not marriage, but like post-Christian, you still wrestle with that, right? As people who are fallen and broken. But there is definitely a bigger thought for me of like, how can I serve you, right? And again, I'm not perfect at it. I'm not good at it, but I'm trying my best. But that's also the same thing for me.
I feel like knowing you're pretty good at it, bro. But if I can even add on to that, I feel like because I lacked so much love growing up, father wounds, I think because of that, like I romanticized relationships. So I was like huge, hopeless romantic too, And I think, at the end of the day, I realized what I see on movies, TVs, social media, it's like, it's not actually what it is, I thought, wow, like that's the epitome of love. If I want to feel love, like to the maximum extent, like what I got to do is I got to be in a perfect relationship. But I realized no matter how perfect the relationship is, and I don't even think that exists, I'm still going to feel this void because a person cannot fully satisfy me. So,
I actually have a question for Christy because, a woman of God.
I'm sorry.
How do you think faith has played a role in shaping your perspective on singleness?
That's a really deep question. Hold on, let me think. I think I've had, by God's grace, the blessing to have grown up in a relatively Christian home, like the standard Christian home. And through that, I've always felt like God has been a part of my life. So I don't know if this will answer, but rather than feeling like faith shaped anything in me, it almost always felt like God was naturally always in the picture, if that makes sense. And so there was always this influence of, I think, the Holy Spirit's conviction in most things that I did. So rather than feeling like, oh, I'm like, not not, okay, I want to be careful with my words, but I'm not like brainwashed by the church. It never felt like that. And even to this day, I'm just so grateful when I look back at the decisions that I think God helped me to navigate through in a way that I believe was through his wisdom. And some that were not, where I can take ownership. I just think that it was always God who was with me. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry. And then the other question was like on singleness, right? And what about it? I don't know if I answered that too. Sorry.
I guess what were we talking about before?
You're talking about like just our experience as a single, like how has that been? How did you navigate it?
But you grew up in a Christian household, so
I did, but I will be really honest. I didn't have like the deepest desire. If I'm being honest, I didn't like guys or girls. Am I allowed to say that? I just wasn't interested in like anything of that nature. And so when I would see in high school like my friends branching off and dating people, I couldn't understand. To me, it seemed immature, but maybe that's coming from like a prideful stance. And then it was only in my young adulthood after college where I was finally able to see myself with another person. But before then, like when guys would pursue me or like sorry, I'm talking to you too. When guys would express interest, it was really hard for me to even think about giving them a chance. Like even one date, in my mind, I never saw it as worth it if I knew that I just didn't like the person. And so that's kind of where I based off my decisions. It wasn't like, I'm going to remain like single and pure and holy forever. Like, don't even talk to me. Like, it wasn't even that. It was out of fairness for the guy and consideration. Like, I don't want to waste your time and make you think there's hope when in my mind, I think there is none. Sorry, I just hit the microphone. But yeah. So.
Thank you for sharing. Did you guys ever have that pressure from family and friends to get married, to get into a relationship? I know I'm a single in the church, and every time I meet with sisters, we're always talking about, oh, new boy, oh, when are you getting married? Oh, this and that. Did you guys have experience with that?
I mean, for me, I never got pressure from my family or anything like that. I mean, I think it was also because, like, I do understand, like, I did date. I do think if you're dating seriously at 23, that is pretty young that you're dating seriously. And so, like, it really wasn't. If anything, my parents were more like, are you sure? You know, you're 23. Like, you sure about this? But yeah, so not for me. It was more so like, I'd say because my family experienced kind of brokenness in the home, it wasn't something that was so like, we definitely didn't romanticize marriage because we saw kind of like the reality of it in a broken state. But it was more so from my friends at school, like the hookup culture was really strong. So it wasn't ever like, who are you dating seriously? But whether it be in our like sports locker room or hanging out with the friends, it was more like, who are you, hooking up with? Who are you talking to? That pressure was definitely there, but nothing to seriously date or marriage or anything like that for me.
Do you have any advice to singles who are in that kind of culture, but who want to take a stance and know I'm a Christian single? Mm-hmm. How did you navigate through that?
Well, I mean, at that time too, I wouldn't say I was necessarily a strong Christian as a believer, but I think for me, even though I wasn't a Christian, I still had standards, if that makes sense. Like, I believe you can be a non-Christian and still believe what is right and and what is wrong, depending on what you think it is. And so for me, I just didn't want to, be with someone I honestly didn't care about for whatever, if it was just for a night or whatever. So I just wasn't about that. But if you're asking me, what would I say to a Christian, right? Somebody who loves Jesus, wants to pursue him as best as he can in that type of secular culture, I would say, yeah, like, don't compromise. Like, you're not missing out on anything. Because I think maybe that's when your friends are at school, like if you're a college student, or let's say you're a young adult, right? And you're in that setting, it may seem like you're missing out on stuff, but really you're not. Like, I don't think you're missing out on anything. Like, I don't think more experienced dating people will make you a more committed partner per se. If anything, I think it'll bring baggage. It might bring memories that you wish you didn't have, something like that. But I think that's more my encouragement. I'd say, hey, like stay strong to what you believe. You're not missing out on anything. And yeah, and like you're doing good. Like believe that.
That's so hard at that age, but seeing it now, I think it's so true. Stand firm. Stand firm. What about you two? Any pressures from family before you got married or right now, Christy?
So when I was like 20, so I told you I had never dated before my first partner when I was 25, and my dad thought it was so weird because he's not like an overbearing kind of Korean dad. He's like the best dad. He just wants me to be happy. And so when I wasn't dating, he thought something was wrong with me. He really thought like, what's wrong with her? Like she could date if she wanted to. What's the problem? And so I think that was one thing I started to question in myself. Like, okay, clearly dating is an interest for other people, but maybe something is wrong with me. So I even really genuinely did contemplate like, okay, do I like women? And I hope I'm allowed to talk about this because I think we should, like maybe there's something wrong with my sexuality, but at the same time, like there have been infatuations with like mostly guys, but I think my problem was when I could see their character and got to know them, I was so turned off that that made me realize, okay, maybe I just haven't found the right person. So rather than focusing on a particular gender, like I just need to keep walking with the Lord, and in His timing, maybe someone will come along. And so when I did start dating at 25 and that was like all in my life, I was like, this is it. I'm putting all of my chips here. And even when things got really, really unhealthy and clearly red flaggish on both ends, I couldn't give it up. It was this like almost stubbornness. And I don't know if I'm deviating from the question, but all this to say that after that relationship, I think my friends and family who really understood me and what I went through, it was no longer an issue of like pressuring me. But I did have some people question out of a good heart, like, do you want to go on a blind date? Or like, are you interested in maybe being set up? And I just told them like, this is not a desire of mine. And I hope you'll respect that, because the more people kept questioning, it felt like they were also then questioning my contentment in the Lord. And, it's not, you don't have to be offended, but it comes to a point where you recognize that other people have values that are not aligned with yours. And some people, like, relationship status is everything. And to me, it's not. And so it's okay. I've made my peace with it, and they can ask, but no, I'm not interested right now. So hallelujah.
Walk with the Lord, sister.
But yes.
Thank you.
Did I get any pressure? Not really pressure, I would say, but I think once I got to become maybe like my late 20s, I would have a lot of mentors, a lot of friends who were like, hey, how about this person? Hey, how about that person? Hey, how about that person? And like my initial thought was like, no. And a part of me was like, are my standards too high? Like, do I gotta humble myself a little bit, But other than that, I wouldn't say not too much pressure, yeah.
Well, pressure is so hard, especially, I don't know, even those little questions that they ask, you're just like, oh, is there something wrong with me? But I think you guys are all right. Just standing firm, walking with the Lord, knowing your standards and knowing how precious you are in God's eyes. I think just following the Lord, right, is going to just keep you going.
I have a question. How about for you? Like, yeah. Like, what about, because, you're also another single, a woman in our church here. So what about you?
Do I get any pressure? I definitely do get pressure. I think because I am pretty new to the church. So there's always questions from the older sisters, from the younger sisters, even the married brothers, because I think their goal is to live vicariously through us. That's what it is. So every chance they get, it's like, oh, are you seeing anyone? Oh, are you interested? And I think that also kind of becomes a burden at one point, right? Because you're like, oh, like Christy said, you are content with the Lord. Actually, maybe I do have baggage from my past and I'm working through that. But if I'm not given that space to work through things, then it's really hard for me. Maybe because I am rebellious, that's who I am. But what is that word? Is it being rebellious? They're like, oh, do the dishes. And you're like, nope, I'm not going to do the dishes. I was going to do the dishes. Yeah. So, right.
That's what you asked me.
Yeah. You know what?
We the same.
Yeah, but I definitely do feel that pressure, from the older brothers and sisters. But I think it really does come from a good heart. Yeah.
What do you think would be more helpful then, right? Because I'm sure, a lot of the people who are listening to who are single in the church are also hearing the same things. What do you think would be more helpful for a single person to hear rather than, are you dating yet? Who are you interested in? Do you guys have anything like that?
Yes. I mean, I think that, okay, this is an entirely different conversation, but I think that as a church, we can do a much better job of caring for each other as individuals and human beings rather than wanting to know the tea on the next relationship, drama or like update. And if it was a precursor to then like, okay, but how are you doing? Like, how's your work? How's your life? I think that's fine. But sometimes it feels like if you're only interested in the romantic aspect of a person's life, then are you reducing a single person's value to who he or she is seeing? And I think that gets hard. So, but one thing I did want to say, is I know a lot of single people who it is a value for them to like find a partner, and they go through so much to try to find someone and they can't find a good match, or it just doesn't work out. And I don't know if I have advice, but I did just want to acknowledge like my experience is probably unique, and there are singles who it's not as easy for them. Like, it is a desire, and just wanted to acknowledge that if anyone is watching and feeling like, okay, that's you, but what about me? Like, I want a relationship. So maybe we'll talk about that more later.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I would like for us to talk about that.
Yeah, I love that. That actually, after I say my little thing, I'll go into that question. This could be a segue into the question, but I think it's really good to check the heart of where people are at, because if I'm not lonely, then I don't need that pressure on me. I don't need that. So just give me space and build trust with me first as a brother, as a sister. And I think when the time comes and I feel safe with you, then I'll share. But because a lot of the times we see each other on Sundays and almost everyone is serving, we don't have that relationship built yet. So that's a personal thing for me, but trust is very important in any kind of relationship. So once I have that trust built with, say, brother or sister, I will be able to share, oh, actually, yeah, I am interested in this person or this or that, because I think I'm the type of person to kind of like hide it if I am interested, because that also builds pressure on me. So I'd be like, hey, hi, bye. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just like how we are getting more comfortable with conversation right now, because we are building trust and we're showing each other vulnerability and sharing our testimonies, I think if we had more times like this, it'd be great. And the YA ministry that started, it's such a great way for us to get to know each other, because there are young adults from all different life stages, all different age ranges to come together to fellowship like this and build relationships. So yeah, I love it. But going off of that, loneliness, I think, is a very big struggle when you're single. That season of loneliness, like Christy and I think we're in, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we're in a season of just contentment, or a season of just walking with the Lord, being with the Lord. But did you guys ever go through a season of loneliness? And how did you guys work with God, talk with God, or brothers and sisters to get through that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I was pretty lonely growing up, but I started ministry pretty young, 20, 21. So, I had friends in ministry about the same age as well. I had mentors in ministry, but I don't know why. Ever since I started ministry, I just had this deep sense of loneliness. Like, some of my friends will never really understand. Even friends in ministry won't fully understand, because the people I'm serving completely different, And I think because of that, what I try to do is I try to ease the pain of loneliness with the relationships. And whether it's friends, I would always try to be around friends. And I remember a mentor of mine in that time would be like, hey, you need to be alone with God, because you're trying to fill that void with friends. And I'm like, get what you're saying. I don't like what you're saying. But I wish, if I can go back in time, like, I wonder how much healthier and how much more fulfilled I would have been, in that time. So not only with friends, but like, relationships wise, like at that time, because, I was in ministry, I was done home ministry when I was really young I thought I'm not ready to be in a relationship, but I would always fantasize about it, right? Like, man, I would love to be in a relationship, but I think that's kind of wrong of me because I just became a pastor, So for me, I tried to fill my emptiness with people, with friends. And what ended up happening was every time I came home, I would feel still empty. And if anything, I would feel emptier, thinking that, being around people, it would fill me, but it didn't. And I think something for those listening, I think the question I would like to ask them is like what's causing that loneliness? Like, what are you trying to find, when you get in a relationship, whether it's trying to fill that void with friends or in a romantic relationship, it's like, do you want to feel known? Do you want to feel seen? Like, is it the presence of someone? Like, what are you trying to find to fill that void? And I think once you ask yourself that and you're able to honestly answer, then I think it will kind of help you move towards, I guess having a mindset or being able to figure out your heart, like, hey, like, this is where I'm at. How can I move forward? Yeah.
That's how you work through your loneliness.
The way I did, I mean, I think after I realized nothing satisfies me. If anything, I feel like I'm just trying to drown out, the voices in my heart, the pains in my heart with external noise, And I think when I realized these things don't satisfy me, it doesn't fill my heart. If anything, it leaves me more empty. I think that's when I was like, okay, you know what? Even as a pastor, I got to go to God, and yeah.
How long did that take you?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it was like I struggled, and then I got it. I don't think it was like that. I mean, my process with the Lord, my journey with God, it was always like, I'll grow, I'll fall. I'll grow, I'll fall. So I'm gonna be honest, I feel like I'm still working through that. And I remember one of the pastors at our church preached on a sermon where it talks about, there is a type of loneliness you feel whenever you're single, but there's also a loneliness you feel when you're married. And I remember when our pastor said that, I'm like, that's me. I got to deal with my heart. Because at the end of the day, like you said, like, loneliness is a matter of the heart. And whenever it's a heart issue, I can't do things externally trying to fix my heart. I got to go to the Lord because He knows how to deal with this. And I think that's what also made me kind of fall in love with God even more, because it's like, man, like, I'm shameful, I'm guilty, I'm disgusted with myself because of my heart, because of, I feel empty, but God is so kind, God is so gentle. The Bible says He's humble, so like He understands us, and He graciously walks us to freedom. So,
Yeah, like, I definitely think someone else said, there's a type of loneliness you experience when you're married, and that type of loneliness is brutal because you essentially have what single people who are lonely are looking for, right? And you have it, but you don't have it. And that type of loneliness is brutal. So for anybody who's out there who's single, right? Like, marriage isn't the answer to your loneliness, like, far from it. But to your question, like, I think for me, loneliness was brutal for me. Like, definitely from the ages of like 18 to like 22, 23, like, loneliness was my struggle. And the thing about loneliness to me was that it's kind of like when you're hungry, you're willing to eat whatever. I think when you're lonely, you're also kind of in that state. You're willing to look for whatever will satisfy, will satiate. And you're willing to act in whatever way for you to get that satisfaction. You're willing to go however far, right, so that you don't feel lonely anymore. And that was my journey. And I definitely think, like, I made a lot of mistakes when I was lonely because I was only looking at me. I was only looking at what am I missing out on? What do I not have? And yeah, like that made me do things that I regret, made me act in certain ways I wish I never acted, right? And like now when I look back at myself, now in my mind, I'm like, why did you do those things, right? Like, why were you so stupid? Why are you so dumb? Like, why? I don't understand. And I would never want to go back and relive those moments, right? But partly it's because I get it. Loneliness makes you do some things. Because it feels so real, and it does feel real, right? And you just try to do whatever you can so you stop feeling lonely. So that time period for me was so brutal. But at the same time, I am thankful for that period because that I had to deal with some of the demons in my own heart during that time. And I had to experience that at that time. And I had to bring those things to God. I had to tell him I'm lonely. And clearly, God, you see it. Obviously, you see it. And because I see it, my friends see it, and of course you see it. But I really had to experience that, and I had to give it to God. Even though it was so hard, right? And because if you don't deal with it early on, you're going to deal with it later on. And I think for me, I'm like, I'd rather deal with that early, get it out of the way, if you can, rather than dealing with it later. Not to say that like I'm immune from loneliness now. That's not the case. But my perspective now is I'm lonely, like you said, Pat, not because I don't have this or that, but it's because I don't have God. And that's what I've come to realize over the years.
Some application that you did or executed in that time?
Friendship. Like I had these 3-4 brothers who, like, they were honestly the ones I ran to during that time, and telling them like, dude, like I'm lonely, and can you pray with me? Can you just speak truth over my life? And I gave them access, because I think another thing about loneliness is you want to keep it secret. You want to keep it hidden. Because there's a shame you feel when you're lonely, right? And the things you do when you feel lonely. But for me, those 4 brothers who loved me, who I was open with, I gave them access into my life, to speak into my life. That's one of like the big practical things I did during that period.
I think relationships, friendships are very important. They're really a blessing and gift from God, because you go to them. I think one of our sermons where God wants the Saturday night version of you. God wants the Monday night version of you, not just the Sunday version of you. But I think that can also show through your friendships. And if they are interceding on behalf of you and speaking over your life, I think that's just a way of God kind of navigating and telling you. So that's really great that you had that community. Yeah. Christy.
I think that's a great application. For me, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a really big introvert, so I think loneliness sometimes is harder for me to feel because I don't mind being alone. But then I realized that like loneliness can also be a symptom of like your spiritual state, or like maybe your mind, and it's a mental health thing too, right? Like maybe you're just mentally unwell, and so I recognize that. But one thing I started to discover as people started dating more, getting married, having children, and when those seasons start to become more and more evident, you start to feel further and further away from people when they enter into their own seasons. And so one thing I believe that God, I hope is from the Lord, that he gave me conviction of, is like, don't wait for someone to reach out to you. And don't have, and I almost feel like he said it in the kindest way he could, because sometimes the temptation for me was like, I'm going to leave this church because they don't know how to properly love the single woman. And it seems like the married moms only care about each other and whatever. So I decided, like, if before I even think about leaving, I need to decide to be part of the change that I want to see. And so maybe that helps anyone listening or watching, like, hey, if you're frustrated or discouraged with loneliness, and instead of trying to fill that hunger and void with another man or another woman or sex or these things, first try out community. Like, see if there's opportunity for friendship. Like, reach out to someone that you normally wouldn't hang out with on the Sunday, and be intentional about how you spend your time. So I think that can be a good remedy, because I've just discovered so many beautiful people in this church, and that doesn't come by chance. Sometimes you have to be intentional, and sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. You can't just wait. Don't be like a passive sideline person, right? Like, get in the game. So, well, not the date. Well, yeah, it could be dating. Okay, anyway, so you know what I mean? Yeah.
I relate to that so much because I think for me, the biggest loneliness period of my life was when my best friends started getting married and having kids, and I wasn't their priority. That hit me so hard because if the weather was nice, I would be like, hey, let's go hang out. And they would come out ready in like 5 minutes, pick them up, and we'll do something. And as slowly they were just disappearing, and I mean, obviously, right? Their family was becoming their priority. I felt so lonely, and it was really hard, to the point where it was very disappointing. To be completely honest with you, I was really disappointed in my community and my relationships. But like Christy said, intentionality, and you went through that. I think being intentional with community is a very big thing, and that's really a gift from God. How about you guys? I mean, Andre, you got married, right, pretty recently. Reverend Patrick, you got married pretty recently.
Just Patrick. Oh my gosh.
But do you guys feel like, and you guys talked about loneliness in marriage, that your single friends have kind of been disappointed or had a certain feeling that I was feeling at the time?
I'm sorry, what is the question?
So because you guys are married and you guys are relatively young, you must have single friends around you, right? Do you feel like you're ever neglecting them or...
Oh,
yeah, because that's how I felt.
be honest. Think
Yeah.
hard. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
We getting real.
Yeah. You want me to go first, or you want to come first?
Oh, you can go first.
For me, yeah, the answer is yeah. Like, out of like those four brothers, I'm the first one to get married. And I do remember a period when I didn't see them as much, like, what you were sharing. Not only that, but even, at our church, I noticed my natural tendency is to be friends with married folks now compared to single folks. And I'm not saying that's wrong, right? Because now it's not just my friends. It's Nita and my friends now. It's not just it's good if we're friends, but there's another layer when like we're friends, like my wife and I, and then you, and then you're, you know what I mean? And so definitely, yeah, there's a natural pull. I think there's such a pull towards similar life stages. But not only that, I feel like even from the single folks, I do feel also at the same time, they're kind of like, you're married. I also don't want to impose on what's going on in your life. So I do feel from both areas. So yeah, the answer is yes to me for sure. Yeah.
I think, I don't know about me after getting married. Maybe I could see how a few friends of mine could have gotten hurt when I started to date someone, actually. It was during COVID, and, because I'm trying to be careful because of COVID, most of my time will be spent with her and not with my friends. And I could see how they could feel neglected or even ignored, abandoned, to some cases. So, yeah. But, I remember when my friends, like my closest friends, they got married before me too. So I remember it was weird because like it would always, and even like couples that we would always hang out together with, it would be like us three. And when they got married, it was just a little different. And it's like, whoa, am I not in the picture no more? And, and of course it's like, hey, you guys got married. But I think I had to learn how to grieve that. And yeah, not saying that what they did was wrong. Like, of course it's not wrong. But I think, hey, I had to give myself time to actually grieve. Like, dang it, it's like me getting old kind of sucks, me having to adult, it kind of sucks, but it's just, I just have to grieve. And,
Did you feel like you were able to express what you were feeling when your friends were going through, or like even not you two, right? Like, or was it just more like you just kept it in and you felt it by yourself?
Definitely that.
Okay.
Because I'm like, I'm so selfish for feeling this when I should be celebrating you guys, right? And even though, and I think before I had the mindset of, because I'm celebrating them, I'm not allowed to feel this. But I think if I could go back and tell the younger Patrick, like, you can do both. It's all good. You can celebrate and you can feel this, I think the question I would even ask myself, the question I would ask myself is, would it be appropriate to tell them? And I'm saying this because a part of me would still feel guilty, Not saying it's wrong, but I think just being honest, like, dang, like, this is weird, because knowing them, they're not intentionally cutting me out, but it's just they got their family now. So I'm sorry. My answer is, of course, it's appropriate, right? But yeah.
I think I kind of slid it in our conversations with my friends saying, oh yeah, it was a very petty way, but at that time, that was the only way I could do it because like Patrick was saying, I didn't want to feel like I'm not celebrating them. They're in this new life stage, but there are times when two of them are married, I'm single, they're talking about buying houses, what to do for weddings, and I'm just sitting there. I'm in school, I'm still doing this. Oh yeah, I'm job driven, this and that. So the topics we were talking about were so different. And I felt that they were being very disinterested, even if they didn't want to, about the topics I was talking about. And same for them. They're talking about this and that. I'm like, I don't need to buy that right now. That's not priority right now. So it did kind of come up in conversation. And now we're more mindful about what we talk about. And when we really try to spend time together, all of their attention is just on us as a friend group. So for me, it worked out in a way where having that conversation worked better for me. It worked out for all of us here.
And I will say, I didn't mean to knock earlier on like those married women who do seek community with each other, because I do believe like once you enter that season, they have their own struggles, their own loneliness, and it is appropriate for them to seek out the support systems that they need. So like they got to do what they got to do, and like single women and men, like we got to do what we got to do, right? But of course, we would also love to gain wisdom, right, from those of different walks. So it's a good balance, but yeah.
Going into the next question, how do you think the church can better support and include those kind of single Christians? Hey.
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is, but I don't know what this would even look like, right? Like, a lot of the single people I know, they want to be in relationships. Most of the single people I know, they want to be in relationships. And I'm thinking, how can the church kind of, I feel like when I think about church helping, and even as a pastor perspective, it's, how can we give more sermons? But I'm even thinking, how can we even help practically, right? Whether it's, I don't know, somehow, some way, setting something up where people can date in a healthy way. I think, like the idea of dating to marriage, right? Like, I don't know if I believe in that per se. I think I believe in dating with intentionality. Because then what happens when you date and it doesn't end up in marriage? Does that mean that dating was a failure? Was God not pleased with that? No, because I know many relationships where they dated, they didn't end up in marriage, but it was really godly. It was very fruitful. So I think that made me kind of shift my perspective. Okay, like, I don't think everyone who dates should end up in marriage. I think you can be very fruitful. It can be very God pleasing and God honoring when you guys date with intentionality and it doesn't end up in marriage, right? Not saying that I get to date around and sleep around, but I think dating with intentionality, and when you realize, hey, this person ain't the one, don't waste anyone's time, right? Don't use that other person to fill your void. It's, be a good brother and sister where we can honor each other and be like, hey, you know what? I don't see a goal moving forward, right? And I think, yeah, you could date in a healthy way. And I wonder if churches can provide something like that. Yeah.
Like a little seminar.
A seminar where they get to meet each other?
Well, I think that they can do on their own.
Christian speed dating.
Yeah.
Ooh.
No, seminar has been brothers with brothers, because the women's ministry recently had a What Marriage Tells All, and that changed
I'm
my
sorry,
perspective.
what is that?
Wives tell all,
Wives
right?
tell
It was
Wives Tell All.
yeah.
It was about we had 4 panelists, and their different walks of their marriage life, recently married, newly married, and into like years of marriage. And it changed my perspective on marriage completely, to the point where I opened my heart to marriage, the idea of marriage, because I'm so job driven, and I was like, you know what? I can live alone. I can do this. I love the Lord. The Lord loves me. I can be single. But it just opened my heart of, wow, there are marriages, because I think I was in a place where I was like, maybe my standards are too high, but I was kind of blaming the men of this generation.
Oh.
Yeah, because like you said, you have to be intentional about dating and stuff like that. But I don't see a lot of intentionality these days. That's why I was losing hope for marriage. But hearing these different testimonies about the marriages really opened my heart. So maybe, do you think that would be a way, or like to teach brothers, hey, like A, B, and C? Because sisters, maybe we're a little bit more mature, but we're more emotionally connected. And obviously, going into that, we learned a lot about the husband's point of view as well. So we learned a lot, and we took a lot from how we could, support the husband, how we can do life with the husband. And maybe we just don't have that for the brothers and sisters as much.
Yeah, I think like a seminar would be great, like helping brothers, because I feel like there's a lot of brothers who mean so well, but they don't know how to be intentional. Like, that was me, right? Like, I meant so well, but I didn't know how to be intentional when I was single. So if there's a seminar on that, maybe another seminar on like, hey, how do you deal with rejection? You know what I mean? Because when I think about it, like myself included, I was always scared to pull the trigger or like make the first move, or even be very upfront, right? And not like up in your face, but like, hey, like be very direct and honest, And I feel like another part of me was so scared of that. I didn't want to do that because what if I get rejected? But I don't even like this person, so is it even worth getting rejected, So, yeah. And you know what? No, never mind.
Say.
No, it's just because you threw a little shade at the brothers, but no.
You
Throw the shade at the woman. Do it.
I mean, like for instance, right? And this is from my experience, and even those around me, anytime they would kind of, like a brother would actually, hey, I would like to get to know you more. Can we grab coffee? I think you're a great person, da-da-da-da. The sister would kindly say no and then tell everybody else, And I know that is so common. And of course, when the brother finds that out, he's going to feel not the best, he's going to feel a little shameful. So then what's going to happen is brothers aren't going to be wanting to be direct, because now if that's the case, the sister will probably tell all of her community, and now he's known as you know what I mean? And of course, like, I'm not just saying like guy, girl, but like, I'm sure there are many cases where it's the opposite. Yeah, there are many cases where it was different too, but I think, having a seminar regarding that might be.
We all need help. We brothers and sisters alike, we all need help.
I mean, I think that just goes to show, like, I think this topic is so complicated. Like, it's not, right? It's like, you listening to this podcast episode or YouTube video won't make you like an elite single, right? And far from it. Like, there's so much that goes into being a single who loves Jesus and who makes the right decisions, right? Like, just one, like, choose one of those. It's already hard. Making right decisions, whether you're single or married, is hard enough. Now, add other factors into it. So I think there's so many things we can do. But I think maybe another thing, like when you're talking about the seminar, it seems like there's like a need for mentorship, a need for discipleship that is both ways. Like, because I think something that I've noticed within the Korean American church, because that's predominantly the church I've been a part of and I've served, there's always been this secrecy when it came to dating. Like you look at youth group, right? Like you try to make it a secret when everybody knows what's going on because they can tell, right? You're sitting on opposite sides of the pews, looking at each other, always walking out together secretly. Everybody knows, right? Like, and they think they're so smart, nobody knows. Everybody knows. And then like that carries on to college, that carries on to young adult, because I think there's a sense of shame in the Korean American church when it comes to dating. Like, and I don't know where it's coming from. It could be maybe because maybe the pastor's preaching something that casts shame on dating when you're young, whether it's, like you said, people talking about it makes you feel shameful. So in the Korean American church, I think there is a layer of shame. So I think, how do we remove that layer of shame and kind of create this culture of like, we love you, we want the best for you. And if that's us championing, encouraging this kind of culture where we can be open in our pursuit of each other, whatever that looks like, I have no idea. But I think there's a layer of shame we have to tackle. I think another one is like that mentorship, discipleship issue, where what I needed when I was 18 to 22, I needed an older brother to come at me and be like, you're doing this wrong. Like you're not making the right decisions. Whether someone is being creepy about it, lovingly coming around and be like, hey, let's have some social cues. Let's not act like this. Let's not talk like this, right? I feel like that's so many things I could have benefited from having older brothers just come alongside. Because for me, I had to navigate it by myself. And that's not blame on the older brothers in my church, right? That's also me. Because of my shame, I didn't want to bring it into the light. I didn't want to ask for help. And I wish when I was younger, I came upon older brothers and I said, I need help. Like, what do you do in this situation? Because I have no idea. And I think if we were more proactive, both sides doing that, I think amongst the brothers, I think we could see a lot of benefit, I think.
For sure. And I think it's similar. I feel like there's so many, like, I feel like most of my wisdom came from all the mistakes I made, right? But yeah, I had a thought, but I completely forgot.
That's okay. All right. So I just have one last question before we wrap up. And it's, if you could offer a piece of advice or a single life motto to fellow Christians who are tuning in today, what would that be?
Just one motto?
Take the stage. It's all you.
I got to think about it. I don't know.
Is it regarding dating? Wait, what was that again?
Yeah. Single advice to fellow single Christians.
Fellow single
Christian. Or just single Christians who are watching. If there's a life motto.
That fly be distracting.
I know. I'm trying to ignore it.
Most important question, and it's coming here.
Oops. Something that you go by. Like, don't lower your standards or...
So I feel like I got 5, like I say. I think number one, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be in a relationship. I remember my friends were telling me to hop on a dating app before I got on a dating app. And I kept telling no. And my biggest thing is shy and thirsty. But guess what? I was, and I think that word alone, it is a little shameful, right? But there's nothing wrong with wanting to be in a relationship, because God designed us to be in relationships, right? So yeah, I would say there's nothing wrong with that. And I think the second thing I would say is, check your heart. It's easy to use people to fill the void in our hearts. It's easy to use our careers, right, to fill the void in our hearts. It's easy to use almost anything to fill the void in our hearts, but it's never going to fully satisfy. It's always going to leave us feeling more empty. And I think, I would say check your heart and go to the Lord. Find your rest, your satisfaction in Him. And then number 3, don't settle for less. Don't compromise. Just because you see potential, don't date because of potential. Because if they have great potential but no character, would they reach that potential? I don't know, right? So, I think those 3 things. I feel like if I keep thinking about it, I can come up with like 10 more. But I will stop right there.
If you need 10 more, Patrick.
Christy or Andre? Oh man, I also have a lot. Probably, I feel the need to tell listeners like you're not a lost cause, and I think I feel the need to remind people that because I'm going to assume, fellow single Christians, that you have tried to go on dates, you have been in relationships, you've made mistakes, and you're doing things even now to try to fulfill your loneliness, behind closed doors that are shameful. And whatever it might be, like, it is never too late to turn to the Lord. And Jesus is a God. He was and is a God who is compassionate and who can redeem. And I think that redemption is so lost on a lot of people who've turned away and felt like, well, there's no hope for me, not in a relationship, not in God and in Christianity. But I think I just hope anyone listening will not feed into those lies and instead give God another chance, and not just like a flimsy chance of like, okay, I'll go to a Sunday service. Like open that Bible and look at a story of how Jesus reached the prodigal, or like how he saw the woman who was bleeding and called her daughter, or like how he loved the sacrifice of the ointment on his feet because he saw, Mary's heart. Like, there is so much beauty and fulfillment if you would just give God a real chance. And I think that is so much more than a nice date where you're treated to steak. But steak is good,
Take me to steak.
But yeah.
Can I actually add one thing to what you're saying? I think as I was hearing you talk, my biggest thing was when I was single was, you don't know all the mistakes I've done when I was single. So I don't think God wants to bless me with the best. I don't even think I deserve the best because I've made so many mistakes, intentional and unintentional. So, and I remember a pastor shared this in a sermon. The pastor was sharing another story, and the story was in a youth group, the pastor hands out a rose to their youth kids, to his youth kids, and it's like, hey, everyone grab it and pass it around. By the time it came all the way back, it was a little wilted, petals were on the floor, things like that. And then this pastor said, you know what this rose resembles? You. And the more you date around and sleep around, you become this wilted, bruised, unwanted rose that's not beautiful. Whew, I'm getting emotional, right? And the pastor preached, and then after that pastor was saying, look, no one would want you now. The pastor preaching that sermon was like, you could tell in his tone, his body language, like, how can you say that? You know who wants you? Jesus, right? And I think when I first heard that, it just hit me because I'm like, I'm a single. I've made too many mistakes, right? Whoopsie. I made too many mistakes. I feel like because of all the mistakes I made, I don't deserve God's best. So maybe second or third best. In God's timing, will I learn my lesson? But I think, yeah, if this could help anyone listening, there's grace, I know I'm a pastor, but if you know me as Patrick and you want to hear my story, like, I feel like I have a 30-page resume of all of my mistakes, maybe one-page resume of, kidding, not kidding, but yeah, there's grace. I think just, walk with the Lord, walk in his love, receive his grace, receive his love. And I think, Leo.
I mean, I feel like they said everything, like they said it all.
Ditto?
Yeah, I mean, ditto. I guess my last thing would just be in community. Like, I think, especially the way dating is now, you can do everything on your phone. No one has to know how you date, who you date, where you date, when you date. And it's so easy to date in secret now, more than ever before. But I would encourage, and I'm talking to the Christian brother and sister, right? This doesn't apply if you're not, but I'm talking to the Christian brother and sister. Date in community, like, be in community, like talk about it, right? Have people praying with you, have people know what you're doing, right? And it's also because, like, if you're in community, like, learn to be a good friend too. Or like, I always think like the prerequisite to being a good boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife is a good friend, because what you do in marriage is what you do in friendship, right? So be a good friend, learn to listen, learn to walk with people, learn to pray, learn to forgive, learn to encourage. And that will make you a far better candidate for marriage, right? So I'd say be in community.
I feel like that's really good for even non-believers as well, because then your close friends, your community can kind of be like, hey, these are some red flags I see in this brother or sister that you might not even see, And I think it could save a person from a heartache, from a nasty breakup, something traumatic goes right.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. I'm feeling a little like, Everything was very beautiful, just warm and very encouraging, especially as a single Christian. And maybe we could do a part 2 next time.
Yeah,
I love it. All right. Andre, Christy, and Patrick, thank you so much for making the time to come out to our second podcast. And thank you guys for tuning in to our second episode of our relationship series. This episode was called Before Coffee Met Bagel. If you liked what you heard, please share, like, and subscribe. And if you have any questions, then put them down in the comments. We'll see you next time.
Good job.
That was really quick.
I had one question that I really wanted to ask, though. It was, singleness can sometimes be viewed as a waiting period for marriage. How can single Christians find contentment and purpose in the present?
It's still rolling.
Is it really? Yeah. Cookie! Yeah, extra cookie really quick. Cookie question. So this is a question that I really wanted to answer because, as I told you guys, I am so career driven and I'm type A future person, right? I have like my 5-year plan, 10-year plan all set. But singleness can sometimes be viewed as a waiting period for marriage. How can single Christians find contentment and purpose in the present rather than focusing solely on the future? Boy.
Well, it is a way. No, I'm totally kidding. Something I try to tell my friends, the people I pour into, is like, enjoy this season, because once this season comes to an end, you will never go back. And there is a purpose and a calling in your singleness, and there's things that you could do, you can never do when you're married. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's just an encouragement. I try to tell people like, hey, like this is a season that's eventually going to end. And because, at least for those who really believe that they're called to marriage and, that's something they're seeking, I believe that their season is going to come to an end sooner or later. And I think, I tell them, try to enjoy the season as much as possible. See what the Lord is doing, and because once you get married, you'll never go back, right? Most of the time. So that's my 2 cents.
Andre, Christy?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I'd say like have fun in this season, right? Like steward it. If you're always looking to the future, you're not going to be able to see all the good you have now, right? And so I'd say enjoy it. Like Pat said, go on an adventure. Like the freedom you have now, use it to grow, right? Use it to serve your community. Use it to love Jesus. See how God is moving out in the world. So if that means you going on missions, right? Or you serving somewhere, volunteering, like see what God is doing out there. Learn some skills, you know what I mean? Like, if you want to learn to play golf, go play golf, right? Like pick up hobbies. Like this is the time to do it, right? And so I'd say go on an adventure, have a ton of fun with Jesus, and learn some skills, learn some hobbies. That's probably what I would say. Yeah.
And if I could add one more thing, like just because you're not married doesn't make married people better than you, right? I think there is this notion where, they probably made it in life, they have more wisdom because they're married. No. It's just different seasons of life, you know what I mean? So I think that's something I also want to say, like, hey, you're not a less than because you're single. And if for those married folk who are watching, we aren't better than single folk. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys Perfect. I think that answer is perfect. One other thing to dispel, I think, is when you call it a waiting season, there's almost this anticipation of like, I can't have something good until. And so I'm reaching for this that I can't attain now. And yeah, in a sense that is true, right? Like there's a relationship aspect, but just like these brothers said, like God has given you gifts for the present. And, like Paul says in 1 Corinthians, like the single person can be worried and can actually labor into the things of God when the married person is worried about the things about marriage. And so there is truth to that, I think. And not even just enjoying, I guess enjoy your singleness well, but like I hate to say it again, but like be intentional. Don't just wait thinking like I'm not going to be able to get it until a certain age. Like go and grab what you want. Like your future is now. I don't know whoever said that, but I agree. Like don't wallow in singleness. Enjoy what is there for you today. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Amen. Okay. Cookie cut.